In late-breaking news tonight, the Immigration Minister, Bowen, has announced the 9-year-old orphan at the centre of the Christmas Island asylum controversy will be released next week and reunited with his relatives in Sydney. The Minister's major backdown comes the day after what's been called a landmark speech in which the government re-embraced multiculturalism. It's been applauded by ethnic communities but failed to stop growing criticism of the government's handling of families of the Christmas Island boat tragedy victims, especially the young boy who lost both his parents. The opposition, meanwhile, has had to counter reports that its immigration spokesman, Scott Morrison, urged a meeting of shadow cabinet last December to capitalise on anti-Muslim immigration sentiment in the community. In a moment, I'll be joined by the Immigration Minister, Bowen, but first, this report from Mary Guerin.
For some, it's a point of pride or a pleasant cliche. For others, it's a loaded term. But for one of the first men to promote multiculturalism in Australia, it's a simple concept.
When Bowen sums it up as respect for everyone, you know, that's not if you want to do it in one word, that's not a bad definition.
It was a concept nurtured by both sides of politics back in the early 70s, starting with Al Grasby in the Whitlam government and continued by Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser. But in the decades that followed, it gradually fell out of favour, particularly in response to the rhetoric of Pauline Hanson in the 90s.
A truly multicultural country can never be strong or united.
John Howard abandoned it, didn't he? And for a while the Labor Party, sort of ran away from its principles. I'm not sure that they recaptured all of them, but perhaps they're making steps back to becoming a more principled party.
And that, he says, is because of this latest speech from the Minister for Immigration and Citizenship, Bowen.
I'm not afraid to use the word multiculturalism. I'm proud of what it's meant for Australia and our way of life. It is an indelible and irrevocable part of who we are, and without it, we would all be the poorer.
We were extremely pleased on behalf of the Federation of Ethnic Communities Councils. It's something that we've been wanting the government to do for quite a while, and that is take leadership on this issue.
The point about multiculturalism is it emphasises what divides us more than what unites us. It was a term useful when arrivals to Australia were basically from the same culture. Multiculturalism has never encompassed what Australia actually is. Australia is basically one culture. It is a Judeo-Christian liberal democracy.
The Minister also announced a new independent advisory body to champion multiculturalism in the community and the development of an anti-racism strategy. Multiculturalism's hit the headlines recently in Europe, with both British Prime Minister David Cameron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel declaring their country's multicultural policies a failure.
We've even tolerated these segregated communities behaving in ways that run completely counter to our values.
Angela Merkel probably doesn't know what she's talking about, because Germany has never had a multicultural policy. So how can a policy that they've never had be a failure?
Conservative social commentator John Roscombe, himself a child of immigrants, believes Australia doesn't face the degree of intercultural problems as other countries. But the Institute of Public Affairs Executive Director does believe that bringing back multiculturalism as an aim is irrelevant and potentially divisive.
It's better to have a debate about these things and say, we are happy to take Muslims, we are happy to take people from any religious ethnic background, as long as it is within the liberal democratic framework of Australia. And for Bowen to talk about multiculturalism, I think, avoids that sort of question.
John Roscombe says inter-ethnic harmony is only now being challenged in Australia by both extreme and subtle challenges to cultural mores.
Certainly there are religious groups that require, in some circumstances, the different treatment of men and women. So simple examples like screens at public bathing pools. Now, that is not the Australian way. And the question that we all have to face as a community is, where do we draw the line on multiculturalism?
It is a challenge, but if that's their practice, does it hurt to allow it to some extent. It's a practice amongst Muslims that will probably change as time passes. Was the alternative that the Howard government would have liked to promote, put everyone into one mould, make everyone the same? Because that sort of policy, which some countries have tried from time to time, is a policy doomed absolutely to failure.
It's straight out of the textbook of One Nation, the Australian Protectionist Party.
I'm here to celebrate harmony.
Yeah, and what sort of harmony are you sowing in the community? You sow racist bullshit.
It's possibly not what they were expecting at the launch of this year's Harmony Day, but both Chris Bowen and his opposition counterpart Scott Morrison were heckled. Both sides of politics are considering how to handle these potentially explosive issues.
At the same time as the government can be seen to be tacking right on asylum seekers, it can also tack to the left on the question of multiculturalism.
I hope it's not to compensate for the asylum seeker policy. I hope it's a step forward towards what I would regard as, or like to think, is the real Australia.
You are a disgrace! Disgusting! How harmonious is it to send an orphan back, Chris Bowen?
The government is already under fire for its treatment of a 9-year-old boy orphaned by the Christmas Island boat tragedy, who the minister has insisted must return to the island before being released into community care. Late today, Mr Bowen announced the child will be released next week. On the other hand, what will be the coalition approach? Fairfax newspaper reports have suggested Scott Morrison proposed tapping into anti-Muslim sentiment in Australia for political advantage. While defending him, his leader wouldn't deny that Mr Morrison raised the issue in shadow cabinet.
As far as the coalition is concerned, we have always had and we will always have a non-discriminatory immigration policy.
All I can say is the gossip reported today does not reflect my views.
I know there'd be a lot of people in the Liberal Party who would like a constructive response, and it might be a larger proportion of people outside the party, the parliamentary party, but they need a lead from Canberra. And I have no confidence that they're going to get that lead. I would love to be proved wrong.
Pino Migliorino of the Federation of Ethnic Communities Councils of Australia says the coalition needs to back the government on this issue.
The way the opposition has been using this to its electoral advantage, I actually think is damaging to the Australian population.
We should have this debate, and it is good that we are talking about it, but we can't talk about it without identifying what multiculturalism is, how it worked in the past, and how it can work into the future.
Mary Guerin with that report.